In the Pacific Ocean, a 100,000-ton floating fortress is being eaten alive. Not by enemy torpedoes, not by hypersonic missiles, not by the Iranian cruise missiles that American commanders lose sleep over. No. The predator stalking the USS Abraham Lincoln right now has no guidance system, no launch coordinates, and no kill switch. It doesn't appear on radar. It doesn't trigger alarms. It moves in silence, in darkness, hidden behind steel panels and beneath layers of gray paint. And by the time anyone finds it, it has already won. The name of this enemy is Rust. And before you scroll past thinking this is a maintenance story, stop. Because what you're about to learn is not about flaking paint or a corroded bolt. What you're about to learn is that the United States Navy is currently fighting a corrosion war that costs American taxpayers over $7 billion every single year, a figure that dwarfs the annual defensive budgets of most countries in the world. It is a war the Navy has been fighting since the first iron warship touched salt water. And it is a war, by every metric that matters, that the Navy is currently losing. The USS Abraham Lincoln CVN-72 is one of the most powerful warships ever constructed by human hands. She is 1,092 feet long. She displaces more water than the entire skyline of a small city. She carries 90 strike aircraft, nuclear reactors capable of powering a mid-sized town, and enough ordnance to reshape a coastline. She has participated in every major American military operation since her commissioning in 1989, from Desert Storm to Operation Iraqi Freedom to freedom of navigation patrols in the South China Sea that keep Beijing strategists awake at night. Sailors call her Abe, and right now, Abe is rotting. Here is a number that should stop you cold. During her last extended maintenance period, the USS Abraham Lincoln racked up repair overruns of over $100 million, much of it driven directly by corrosion damage that was worse than anyone had anticipated when the ship entered dry dock. The overrun pushed her return to fleet operations back by more than a year. During that year, the United States Navy had one fewer carrier battle group available to project power across the globe. That means one fewer deterrent in the Taiwan Strait, one fewer rapid response option in the Persian Gulf, one fewer bargaining chip on the geopolitical table. All because of rust. This is the story of the silent enemy. This is the story of iron, salt, and time. And why the most dangerous threat to American naval supremacy might not be sailing out of a Chinese or Russian port. It might already be eating through the hull of your own ship. To understand why rust is so catastrophically dangerous to a nuclear supercarrier, you first have to understand what a ship like the Abraham Lincoln actually is at its core. Beneath the flight deck, beneath the arresting cables, the catapult tracks, the aviation fuel lines, the weapons elevators, and the 5,000 men and women who call her home. The Abraham Lincoln is essentially a city made of steel. Over 60,000 tons of high-tensile steel holds this structure together. Steel frames, steel bulkheads, steel decks, steel pipes carrying seawater, fresh water, aviation fuel, hydraulic fluid, and weapons-grade ordnance from one end of the ship to the other. The entire floating fortress is threaded together like a circulatory system, and every artery, every vein, every capillary is made of metal. And metal exposed to the ocean wants to die. The chemical process is brutal in its simplicity. Iron reacts with oxygen and water, and the ocean provides both in infinite supply. The result is an iron oxide, rust. But on a warship, the conditions for corrosion are not merely present, they are extreme. Aircraft carriers operate in salt spray that penetrates every crevice, every weld seam, every rivet hole. They operate in temperature cycles that swing from tropical heat to Arctic cold within a single deployment, causing metal to expand and contract and microcrack, creating fresh entry points for moisture. Aviation fuel vapor, jet exhaust, weapons propellant residue, hydraulic fluid. All of it combines with seawater and oxygen to create a corrosive cocktail more aggressive than almost anything found in nature. And then there is the enemy within, the nuclear propulsion system that gives the Abraham Lincoln her unlimited range. The same system that makes her strategically invaluable. Also generates intense heat that cycles through steam turbines, heat exchangers, and thousands of feet of piping. Thermal stress accelerates metal fatigue. Metal fatigue creates cracks. Cracks become rust. Rust becomes structural compromise. And structural compromise on a warship carrying nuclear reactors, 90 aircraft, and millions of gallons of aviation fuel is not an abstract engineering problem. It is a national security crisis. The numbers the Navy has released, and the far larger numbers it has not, are staggering. The Department of Defense's own corrosion office has documented that corrosion accounts for approximately 25% of all maintenance costs across the entire military. For the Navy, that percentage climbs higher. A single Nimitz-class carrier, like the Abraham Lincoln, requires corrosion-related maintenance that can consume millions of man-hours per overhaul cycle. Sailors aboard these ships spend a significant portion of every deployment performing what the Navy calls preservation work. Grinding, priming, painting, treating in a Sisyphean cycle where yesterday's repaired section begins corroding again before tomorrow's inspection. Retired naval engineers who worked on the Lincoln's midlife refueling and complex overhaul. The RCOH that took place at Newport News Shipbuilding in Virginia have described what they found inside the ship as genuinely alarming. Hull frames corroded far beyond what maintenance logs had suggested. Voids. Sealed compartments deep in the ship's interior that are rarely accessed. Found to contain standing water and rust damage dating back years, possibly decades. Pipe systems so compromised that replacement, not repair, was the only option. Every discovery of hidden damage triggered a cascade of additional inspections, additional removals, additional replacements. The shipyard hours mounted, the calendar pages fell, and the bill grew. This is not a problem unique to Lincoln. The USS George Washington had her own nightmare overhaul story. The USS Harry S. Truman was kept out of operational service far beyond her scheduled maintenance window due to corrosion-driven cost explosions. The pattern is systemic. The pattern is accelerating. And the pattern has a name: deferred maintenance decay, where budget pressures cause minor corrosion to go unaddressed year after year until it becomes catastrophic structural failure that costs 10 times as much to fix. Here is where this story stops being about shipyard chemistry and starts being about global power. The United States Navy operates 11 nuclear-powered aircraft carriers, the only nation on Earth to possess more than 2. This fleet is not merely a military asset. It is the physical embodiment of American foreign policy when a crisis erupts anywhere in the world. When North Korea tests a ballistic missile, when Iran masses forces near the Strait of Hormuz, when Chinese warships encircle Taiwan. The first question asked in the White House Situation Room is always the same. Where are the carriers? CAR. That question assumes the carriers are available, operational, and combat-ready. The Abraham Lincoln's corrosion-driven maintenance delays challenged that assumption in ways that Pentagon planners found deeply uncomfortable. When Lincoln was pulled from the fleet for her overhaul, an overhaul that stretched well beyond its scheduled timeline, the Navy was forced to redistribute carrier coverage across the globe with one fewer asset. This is not a theoretical problem. The Navy's own force structure assessments have repeatedly concluded that 11 carriers is already the minimum number required to maintain continuous coverage of critical theaters. Remove one from the equation for 12 to 18 extra months, and the math simply does not work. Coverage gaps appear. Adversaries notice. And America's adversaries are paying very close attention. Chinese naval analysts, Russian military planners, and Iranian strategists have all invested enormous resources in studying the operational patterns of American carrier battle groups. Their deployment cycles, their maintenance schedules, their known availability windows. Every extra month a carrier spends in dry dock is a month that shows up in the intelligence assessments of potential adversaries as an opportunity window. A gap in carrier presence in the South China Sea is a window in which China might feel emboldened to push harder against Filipino fishing vessels or test an air defense identification zone around Taiwan. A gap in the Persian Gulf is a window that Iranian naval commanders and IRGC leadership are trained to identify and potentially exploit. The corrosion problem also cascades into carrier strike group dynamics in ways that are rarely discussed publicly. The Abraham Lincoln doesn't operate alone. She deploys as the centerpiece of a strike group that includes Ticonderoga-class cruisers, Arleigh Burke destroyers, attack submarines, and logistics vessels. When Lincoln is delayed in maintenance, those escort vessels, which have been earmarked and crew-cycled to deploy with her, face their own scheduling disruptions. Crew readiness degrades. Training cycles are disrupted. The ripple effect from one corroded hull frame on one ship radiates outward through an entire battle group and ultimately through entire fleet operational planning. The budget reality makes this worse. Every dollar spent grinding rust and replacing corroded pipe on the Abraham Lincoln is a dollar not spent on the offensive systems, the electronic warfare upgrades, and the unmanned platform development that the Navy needs to maintain technological superiority over the rapidly modernizing Chinese People's Liberation Army Navy. China is currently commissioning new warships at a rate that has genuinely alarmed American naval planners. And while Beijing shipyards are turning out fresh hulls with modern anti-corrosion coatings, American shipyards are consuming thousands of man-hours trying to save ships whose hidden corrosion damage should have been caught and addressed years earlier. The Navy has attempted technological solutions: thermal spray coatings, advanced cathodic protection systems, corrosion-resistant alloys in high-risk zones, robotic inspection systems that can access voids and confined spaces that human maintainers cannot safely reach. Some of these programs are genuinely promising, but none of them have yet broken the fundamental dynamic. A nuclear supercarrier operating in the open ocean is engaged in a permanent war with the most corrosive environment on the planet, and the ship is always fighting uphill. So what happens now? What is the United States Navy actually doing, or failing to do, about the silent enemy eating through the hull of one of its most powerful warships? The honest answer is not enough. Not fast enough. Not with enough funding. The Navy has acknowledged the corrosion crisis in internal documents, congressional testimony, and Government Accountability Office reports that have been quietly alarming for over a decade. The GAO has repeatedly flagged the Navy's maintenance backlog, driven substantially by corrosion damage, as a critical readiness risk. Congress has allocated additional funding in recent defense authorization acts. New inspection protocols have been mandated. Predictive maintenance systems using sensor networks and AI-driven analysis are being piloted. Shipyard capacity is being expanded, slowly, painfully, at enormous cost. But the USS Abraham Lincoln is not waiting for the bureaucratic timeline to catch up. She is out there, right now, operating in some of the world's most contested and corrosive waters, doing the job that only she can do. And somewhere, deep inside her hull, in a void compartment beneath the waterline, behind a bulkhead that hasn't been opened in 3 years, in the shadow of a weld seam where salt water pooled during the last storm, iron is reacting with oxygen and the rust is spreading, one invisible molecule at a time. There is something almost philosophical about it. The Abraham Lincoln, named for a president who preserved the Union through its most violent and existential crisis, is now facing a threat that no admiral can counter with strike aircraft, no president can deter with sanctions, and no carrier battle group can intercept with missiles. The enemy doesn't negotiate. It doesn't pause for diplomatic back channels. It doesn't respect the awesome power of a Nimitz-class nuclear supercarrier. It just keeps working. In the dark, in the wet, in the cold. Patient, in the way that only chemistry can be patient. The $7 billion annual price tag the Navy pays to fight corrosion across its fleet is not an abstract accounting figure. It is the cost of maintaining the credibility of American sea power in an era when that credibility is being challenged more aggressively than at any point since the Cold War. Every corroded frame that goes undetected, every maintenance overrun that keeps a carrier out of service for an extra year, every budget dollar consumed by rust that should have gone toward next-generation capability. All of it slowly, quietly erodes the margin of superiority that American naval dominance has rested on for 80 years. The missiles and the mines and the hypersonic weapons are real threats. The submarine threat in the South China Sea is real. The Iranian naval swarm doctrine in the Persian Gulf is real. But the threat that keeps Navy material commanders, shipyard program managers, and fleet readiness officers awake at 3 in the morning, the threat that they can never fully defeat, never fully contain, never fully outspend, is a chemical reaction that has been happening since the first sailor ever put iron in salt water. The silent enemy was here before the Abraham Lincoln was built. And if the Navy doesn't win this fight, the right way, with the right resources right now, the silent enemy will be here long after